The woman was scanning the ocean. She suddenly spotted something strange. In this desolate stretch of sea, how could there possibly be a light ahead? She quickly swung the searchlight over for a closer look, and what she saw left her stunned. It was a dilapidated ghost ship, barreling toward them at a terrifying speed of 1 meter every 20 seconds. She immediately alerted the captain to turn the rudder hard to starboard, narrowly avoiding a head-on collision. But what they didn't know was that the real danger was just beginning, because this ship was far from ordinary. Its hull was battered and aged, covered in fishing nets, and what looked disturbingly like fresh blood. Everyone on board was shaken. They turned to the experienced captain for answers, but all he could say was that it was an ancient three-dimensional ship, a type long out of use. Beyond that, he knew nothing. That only raised more questions. How could an ancient vessel appear out here in the middle of nowhere? There was no time to think. The ghost ship suddenly turned around and charged back at them. The attack was so sudden, there was no way to dodge. The two ships collided. Luckily, the damage wasn't severe, but their lifeboat got tangled in the ghost ship's fishing nets. If they didn't act fast, they wouldn't just lose the lifeboat. The entire ship could get dragged down into the sea. Jack was ready to cut the lifeboat loose to save the main vessel, but out at sea, the lifeboat is their last line of defense. David refused to give up. He decided to board the ghost ship and cut the net himself. Time was ticking. Everyone worked together to set up a makeshift plank bridge. The waves were rough, but as long as they worked in unison, they had a chance. Moments later, David and Annie formed a team and crossed over, but disaster struck. The wind and waves were too fierce, and the plank fell into the sea. Fortunately, they managed to grab the ship's railing just in time and pulled themselves aboard the ghost ship. There was no time to think about how to get back. They immediately pulled out knives and started cutting the nets. Finally, the lifeboat was freed, but just as the net came loose, David was thrown to the ground by the force of the release. When he stood up, his hands were covered in blood. That's when they noticed. The entire cabin was soaked in blood. Seeing this, David began to suspect the truth. This might be an ancient plague ship, used to store the bodies of those who had died from deadly diseases. That was bad. If they caught something from the ship, it could be fatal. They had to leave, and fast. David shouted for Jack to throw over a rope, then tied it to a wooden post to form a makeshift rope bridge. Annie went first, leaping onto the rope and using it to swing back to their ship. Now only David remained. They tossed him a life ring, but just as he was about to cross, the rope snapped. Seeing that David might not make it back, Annie quickly hurled out the anchor with all her strength. Then David tied the other end of the rope to the wooden post, finally making it back safely.